Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are going to see a little bit of an example of interaction with the cards for Magic. I didn't forget about this series. We're still going to talk about Magic the Gathering. So I'm using some of the cards. I've just picked out a few at random here. So first of all, let's give you an example of how the mana would work. We can put in Lumbering Falls. It produces green or blue mana, so it produces both. You could produce a green mana or you could produce a blue mana with it, whichever you wanted to use it for. You can also pay the cost there, and it becomes a 3/3 green and blue elemental creature with hexproof until end of turn. Still land. Now this is an older card from the original Zendikar block. But it's called Lumbering Falls. But it says it comes into play tapped. So essentially, we go, lay the card down, it enters tapped. Which means you cannot use it for mana or any other ability. Right now, it's just there. That's just it. There's nothing else you can do with it. So, let's get an example here. We're going to do this. Whenever you start a turn, let's say this first time come in is the first card you play. You untap, you pay any upkeep costs, and the cards will tell you if they have upkeep. Then you draw, which I put this into my hand. You know, my opponent doesn't see it, or hopefully you don't show it to your opponent, but you keep it to you keep it to where only you can see it, so it's considered part of your hand. And when the time happens, you can play it. So let's do this. Let's put this down here representing the hand. And say the next thing we do is we play a land. The Jwar Isle Refuse. It also enters the battlefield tapped. And when it enters the battlefield, you gain a life. So you can use it to get blue or black mana. Now, you can't pay for mana or anything like that, but it says when it enters, you gain a life. So your life total always starts at 20. It will jump to 21. The next turn, you do the untaps. And so all of a sudden you have the land. And you pay your upkeeps. You draw another card. Put it into your hand. So I didn't shuffle these or nothing. I just gathered them. So there's two Jace's Erasure. Let's do this. We shall play them. Jace's Erasure goes into the battlefield. You don't have to tap it or anything, because it is an enchantment. And whenever you draw a card, you may have target player put the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So you played this card, it's in play, and where it's an enchantment, it stays in play. It doesn't have any requirements to tap it or to tap mana. So, the next turn, untap, upkeep. We draw another card, Jace's Erasure again. Like I said, I didn't shuffle it or anything, but we put it into play and we tap the mana for it. So we tap for 1 and a blue, which is its casting cost. Remember, we talked about casting costs. Right up there, you see it. 1 and a blue. And that's how you get the casting costs. So, you draw your next card. We get Cathartic Adept, but that would force that into the graveyard. So, that's kind of the basic idea of how your turns work. Now, let's put my cards back here on top. And I don't know if I went over the basics here, but whenever you take your turn, the first thing you do, the first phase of your turn is untap. So if you have land that's tapped, if you have creatures that are tapped, you untap them so that they can be accessed this turn. If they're already tapped, you can't access them. So, that's untapping. The next thing you want to do is upkeep. And like I said, upkeep, it's not used very much in the game in general. But usually the cards will tell you you can do this during your upkeep or during their upkeep. It's usually the second phase in a turn. And then the next thing that you can do, you draw. So untap, upkeep, draw. So that you get a card to your hand. Another Cathartic Adept. Like I said, I didn't shuffle them. Now, once you draw, I believe you hit your main phases. You do main phase 1, which means you tap mana, put spells out, whatever you're going to do. That's your first main phase. You do an attack. And if you attack with something, you want to tap it. So say I send this attacking, not using its ability, but just to attack with it as a 1/1, I tap it. So it's recognized as an attacker. Now, that's your first main phase. It comes around to the second main phase. Whatever else you want to do, they're still tapped. They remain tapped until the next turn. So the second main phase finishes, and I believe that's the end of the turn, and you pass. So that's how a basic interaction works. With the cards. Let's do something else. We're going to move some of these around just a bit. Now, let's say this is your opponent's field, because they're turned to where they can read them, and yours are turned to where you can read them. Let's see what else I've got here I want to work with. Cathartic Adepts. Planeswalkers. Let's turn this over. Crow of Dark Thoughts. Usually you'll have the mana for the colors where you have to tap them, but we're just putting them into play so we can see what it is. We'll give them the owl. Chandra. I love the Nemesis of Reason. It's one of my favorite cards. We'll put it down here. That'll be enough for right now. So we can use this as an... let's do this way. And this way. Now, there's your opponent's creatures, and there's your creatures. They're lined up. Now, let's say they attack with the Cathartic Adept. A pretty easy block. You can block with anything because it's only a 1/1. If you remember, I talked to you in a video about how power and toughness works. So you could give up your own Cathartic Adept. But if you didn't want to do that and you just wanted to block it as the little weenie creature it is, you could just say, and you don't have to tap for blocking, but you could signal this goes up against the Cathartic Adept. The Cathartic Adept would go in their graveyard. Now, here's something else we have. Abilities. If they attack with the 2/1 flyer, the Adept cannot block, Nemesis cannot block. They don't have the ability to fly. But the Ring Warden Owl does. So you could go, I'll block with my Ring Warden Owl, and it'll kill that creature since it has less toughness, and it don't have the power to kill the Ring Warden Owl. So, again, that will go in the graveyard. Now, he could attack with his Akroan Sergeant. It has first strike. You could swing. Now, it would kill the Adept without taking damage. If you blocked with the Owl, it would do the damage to the Owl first, where it's first strike, but the Owl has so much damage it would soak it up and kill the Akroan Sergeant. And the same with the Nemesis of Reason. And thus would kill this. I just want to give you a bit of an overview on how some of these cards work. With the interactions. But where I hadn't talked about any Magic in a while, I figured I'd go ahead and make a new video about it. So, but anyway, I think that'll be it for now. Until later, or until next time, I'm all over the place. Educate thyself is what I want to say first. Until next time, later. Oh, goodness.